Hi guys, thanks for checking out Next Level Carpentry. I pushed pause on the pellet wood door build project because I want to show you this Williams & Hussey molder in action. The timing is not ideal because I don't know the status of the potential upgrade to a new molder and doing an unboxing, but I'm making some base for my day job. It's this profile here. And I've got to make 150 feet of this. I've got to get it made and stained today, and I can't wait a week to see how things develop. But I wanted to take this opportunity to show you what my molder that I've had for 20 years looks like, runs like, what its capabilities are, and then give you a little bit of an idea of its limitations. So I've got it all set up here. The dust collection thing is a little hinky because I got this machine back in the day when the common thinking was, I don't need no stinking dust collection. So I've kind of done a ghetto approach to my dust collection system here, but it's going to be functional and gather up most of the shavings that come flying out of this machine. This stack of blanks here is exactly 9/16 of an inch thick and 3.5 inches wide, because that's how big a piece it takes to replicate this base molding. I'm not going to go into the details here, but I'm going to run this back out profile on the molding before I run the face profile. And I've got the machine all set up to do that first. With the heavy cast iron guard removed, you can see the two knives that are installed on the cutter head. These knives are made with a slot in them and can be offset to vary the width of the profile they're cutting. The original molding has a square-edged profile, but these knives have nice 45-degree corners. And this is the back-out profile that I've set up for this base. I got this width by offsetting one of the knives about 1/8 of an inch. And I'm going to show this with an emphatic, do not try this at home. Don't ever operate this machine without the guard. But I'm going to do it here so you can see that cutter head turn into a blur when the machine's running. Steer clear, put your hands in your pockets. And with the RPM of the cutter head combined with the feed rate of the machine, this produces a glass smooth finish on the finished molding. I've gone through this stack of blanks and marked the back and the bottom and have them stacked on this cart, oriented, so I run them through the molder in the same direction they're stacked. This assures that the best looking face and edge of the base ends up in the front and on the top. And with the guard back in place, I'll fire up this Gyro Air G700 dust processor and run the back out profile on an 8-foot piece of molding. And it took about 20 minutes to run that back out profile on this whole stack of molding, and the machine never breaks a sweat. There's knockoff brands out there on the market. Company that I suspected reverse engineered the Williams & Hussey machine, but for whatever those machines are able to do, they don't have the quality or the guarantee that Williams & Hussey puts into their machines. Plus, they're made and sold in the USA, which in this day and age is a remarkable statement. I've had this machine for 20 years, never had an issue with it whatsoever, and it's running strong and performing well to this day. And if you think that's impressive, keep in mind that that's just the back out profile. The original molding, that profile was done with a dado blade. But now I want you to see how the machine performs and the end results you get doing the face profile. And running the face profile gets me into territory of why I want to upgrade from the molder I've had 20 years to the new model 206 that Williams & Hussey is putting out these days. The machine you saw working there has a single speed and pretty much a single pass. Sometimes I'll run the profile about a 32nd of an inch shy of what I want to end up with, and then I shave off that other 32nd for a chatter-free finished profile. That works fine, but the downside is that taking a thin shaving tends to heat up the knives more and shortens the knife life. So you're going to see how I run the profile on this molding on this machine, and I think you'll be able to see why multi-pass and variable speed would make a difference on the newer machines. The newer machine also has a different dust collection port or guard. It's a combination so that I wouldn't have to use duct tape to hook up to the dust collector. There's a fair amount of material that needs to be removed to get from this blank to this profile. And because I want to get as smooth of a finished pass as possible, I'll pre-mill off the corners of the blanks by putting a bevel cut on this with a table saw and then leaving, about a 1/16 of an inch margin so that the table saw blade doesn't get down into the wood that's needed for the finished profile. I think that'll make sense going forward, and put it in your mind's eye that with a multi-pass system or variable speed, a person could sneak up on that cut, make this cut in 2 passes with the molder, and then slow down the speed for the final pass for a glass smooth finish. I'll get it done. I'll get the same end result with this machine and this profile, but there is a benefit to those features, which is why they developed it and built it into the machine. This is a very small profile. If you can imagine a 6-inch wide crown molding, all those factors go exponential in producing that molding. I've made a custom profile 6-inch molding with this machine, but I've got to do a little more pre-thinking and preparation, whereas with variable speed and multi-pass, I can just process the blanks entirely with the molder. I determined that it would take an 18-degree bevel to pre-mill these blanks before running them through the molder. So I cut that bevel on my sample piece of molding, and now I'll switch out from the back-out knife to the profile knife and make my final setup before committing to that pre-milling on this whole pile of blanks. The knives are held in place by beefy bolts that I upgraded to grade 8 bolts, just for peace of mind, although I'm sure it's not necessary. I keep my cutter library in these custom sleeves I made exactly for this purpose. And I'll grab a couple more bolts for installing these particular profile knives. I'll say a few words here about knives or cutters for this molder. And I bought this machine close to 20 years ago, and for whatever reason or circumstances, I ended up gravitating towards Tim Younger of Custom Moulding Knives in Vermont, and we've developed a business relationship since then, and he's made just about all the cutters I had. A few in the beginning I had made by somebody else, and I don't remember the reason. But Tim grinds knives for all sorts of machines, Williams and Hussey included. He does stuff for shapers and everything else. And I'm not completely sure of the knife services that Williams and Hussey has. I'm sure they're good. They've got a good reputation and good reviews, and we'll see what the future holds. But Tim has the capability of matching any profile. So I sent him a couple samples of this molding, and then he creates a template for creating a knife, and the template matches that profile exactly. And then the knife grinding machines, as I understand them, are similar to when you go and have a key made at the hardware store. They put your key in one place, and then they put a blank in front of a cutter. There's a follower that follows the template, and it grinds the profile of the steel to match the profile of the template. It's more involved than that because there's relief cuts and relief angles that need to be put into the knives. And I can attest to the fact that Tim at Custom Moulding Knives does a fantastic job. That'll come into focus. You can see that that is flat out gorgeous. And not only does it look good, but it performs wonderfully. This is Black Nitride Steel. Most of my other steel, well, actually all of my other cutters are made in high-speed steel. That's always been adequate. But I wanted to use Black Nitride because it's harder and longer wearing. Even though I only have 150 feet of this molding, it's being made out of hard maple, and I want to make sure I get a smooth, clean finish from the beginning of the run to the end. If high-speed steel would wear quickly and the last 30 feet of molding got a little fuzzy or rough, I'd easily spend the money sanding that I should have spent in the first place on high-quality steel. So there's a shout out, Tim. Anybody watching can rely on Custom Moulding Knives to make fantastic cutters for whatever machine they need them for. I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but the main point is that the knives are ground so that the deepest part of the cut is oriented closest to the height adjustment pillars on the machine. This machine is beefy and robust and is capable of milling extremely aggressive profiles, but it's just a decent principle to grind the knife this way. Because the holes in the blanks are drilled oversize, I make sure to shift the knife in one direction on both knives so that they're indexed to the same tangent point of the retainer bolts. It goes without saying that the straight edge of the knife needs to be placed firm and parallel to the indexing shoulder on the cutter head. It's a good idea to be mindful of the fact that these cutters are sharper than a Ginsu knife, so handle them accordingly. And it's always been amazing to me that something so straightforward, simple, and basic can work so extremely well. Next, I'll take a small scrap of the profile I'm matching and use that to set up the blank so that it runs through the machine properly oriented to the cut of the knives. Because the molder comes with a cast iron base, I made this auxiliary platen or table a long time ago. It's made out of 1/2-inch Russian birch. And I've done that for moldings like this, where the knife comes down close to the table. The guides are notched to allow clearance for a spinning knife, but the final depth adjustment has to be made with the machine running so that the knife can cut down into that sacrificial guide bar there. And that's because the profile is thinner than the guide bar at the tangent point when the cutter swings through. It should be no surprise that this process takes a bit of fussing, and there's people that are much better qualified than myself for explaining the most efficient and direct approach. But I hope it's also clear that the process is pretty simple, even though it's a little fussy. Because I need a precise match of this molding, I spent extra time dialing in the adjustments and setting the guide rails in the molder in relation to the knives. After a couple failed attempts where I had to shift it back and forth a little bit and change the depth, I got it nailed down. And the final fit is a flawless match. Rotating this handle changes the depth of cut of the cutter head assembly, and this knob here locks it in place. I put a piece of tape on the top here and mark it where the handle ends up with the final cut depth. That way I can run the molding at about 1/3 of a pass thick, run all the pieces, and then rotate it back into the end position for the final pass so that all the molding is clean, chatter-free, and precisely the same thickness. This is a bit of a technicality, but by raising the cutter head about 1/3 of a rotation, it decreases the down pressure on the infeed roller of the machine, so it's a little reluctant to pull the stock through with this setting. Once it gets to the outfeed roller, it pulls it positively. And then on the final pass, it pulls it through perfectly. But I'll leave it set like this when I do the initial pass on all the pieces. Once I've verified all the steps, processes, and setups to get that finished molding to the profile I want, I can go back through and run the whole stack of blanks through the process as it goes. I've got the saw set up here with the fence on the opposite side, blade tilted this way 18 degrees. All my blanks are organized with the top edge facing that way. So I take them up off the pile, put them like this, and run that bevel profile. The feather board keeps the piece from wandering. If it would wander too much, it could dig in to the wood where the finished profile wouldn't shave it off. With all that said, I'll fire up the dust processor, put the bevel on all these blanks, then reorient the shop to run the face profile in 2 passes through the molder. As usual, it takes about as long to set up the camera and talk about it as it does to do the actual operation. But in a few minutes, I've got all these pieces beveled, ready to head through the molder after I get rid of this scrap. And this exercise shows a bit more of the reason why a multi-pass feature on the molder is a big benefit, especially for a small shop where I don't have the space for a dedicated ripping station and a dedicated place for the molder. I'm able to reconfigure machines, switch out my dust collection ducts, and get the job done, even in a small shop. This shop is longer than my last one, where in that case, I actually had to open up the overhead door to run 12-foot molding. But this shop allows me to do it inside. It does demonstrate, though, the value of having versatility in your shop configuration and equipment. It's always good to clean up the big chunks as you go, right? So running the initial pass of the molding took about 20 minutes or so, but all the blanks are done to that stage. You can see there's still a flat spot here. Hope that shows up. That's what I'll be taking off with that final pass on the molder. I'm going to break in here to ask viewers if you like the kind of content you're seeing here with deep in the weeds insight into the way a profitable woodworking shop slash carpentry remodeling business operates. I'd appreciate if you'd subscribe to Next Level Carpentry if you haven't already. It's free, you know, and you'll be notified each time a new video is uploaded. This video will be released as a live premiere, and it's kind of a kick to watch the thumbs up count number jump by hitting the thumbs up in unison. So everyone that likes the video enough to give it a thumbs up, let's hit it in 5 seconds. Here's the countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, smash. Thanks everybody. The last time we did that, it jumped about 60 likes in just a couple of seconds. So we'll see what that did this time. I'm also going to mention my appreciation for everyone that's gone above and beyond by becoming a patron on Patreon. Your generosity helps support the channel and helps me devote more time to producing content and less time working out on the job where it's just not practical to shoot video. Any other viewers that are inclined to support the channel in that way by going above and beyond, there's a link to Patreon in the video description. Jump in there, sign up, support the channel. It's a wonderful thing. And there's also a link to Teespring for t-shirts like this, signs like that, etc. And there'll be an Amazon influencers page link there that shows most of the tools and supplies I use, vet, and recommend here in the shop. If you need anything on that list that you can't find locally, use one of those links to buy it. You'll get the same low online price that you're used to. And Jeff Bezos reluctantly sends a check to pay me for small ad fees out of his profit. I think it's great. It might not be so wonderful for him. Anyways, let's get back to work. So I unlock the cutter head, drop the crank down to my previous setting for the final pass, lock it down, and start that final run. And the final trip through the machine, I call that the money pass. Goes into the machine looking nice, comes out looking marvelous. And running the back out and the face profile on 150 feet of molding only produced about half a bin of shavings. And that little time lapse finishes up the run of about 150 feet of this custom profile molding made in hard maple. Every piece is pretty much perfect. And try not to overlook the perspective here. I'm one guy working in the shop. If I wasn't shooting video, this whole process probably would have taken 2.5 hours to make 150 feet of this molding. It's perfect, and in many respects, it's better than the quality of the molding that I'm replacing, and it was done in a commercial shop. It's good molding, but this is impeccable. Every piece is perfectly flat because I prepped the blanks myself. I bought it from the local hardwood supplier and had them put one straight edge on it. I did all the rest of the milling myself to size those blanks. By doing that, I get all the waves, the dips, the bows, the twist, everything out of the molding, and they're perfect. And I'm motivated to do that because I'm the guy that's got to stain, lacquer, and install this stuff. I don't remember if I mentioned it earlier, but my shop is a 2-car garage. It's too long instead of too wide, but I can easily handle this project inside. If all you have is a 1-stall garage for your shop and you can open the overhead door, this is totally manageable with that Williams & Hussey machine. The alternative for me was to go back to the commercial cabinet millwork shop that made that molding in the first place in 1998 and see what they would charge to make 150 feet of this molding. I'm guessing because they use a different machine that runs the molding through faster, there's more setup. It might be a 4-head machine. They might put 3 hours setup time just to run this for the first foot. Somewhere at around 1,000 or 1,500 feet, the value balance tips in favor of a high production machine, but for any run 1,000 feet or less, custom, there's no way I can beat that machine. I keep saying I've had that thing for almost 20 years. It's paid for itself. a dozen times over just from the work I can produce, to say nothing of the fact that my reputation now is that if you need a custom precise molding, talk to Matt Jackson because he can make it. So not only is it a woodworking machine, it's a marketing machine. And I don't know about you, but I just love the way this stuff looks and feels. I got to keep after it. I'm going to scuff this just lightly with 150 grit sandpaper to take out the mill marks on the flat part, which was left from the DW 735 thickness planer. And I might take a Scotch-Brite pad to this profile just to rough it up ever so slightly so it'll take stain better. This is maple after all, and it's hard to get the stain to bite as it is. But I'm going to get after that part of it and get this stuff stained up before I can call it a day. So, as always, and until next time, thanks for watching. I like it that the molder is precise, powerful, and compact, which means I can easily justify the footprint it takes up in the corner of my shop, and it makes a profit for every project I use it on.